Have you ever felt like trying to build anything in Aotearoa is like playing a lottery where the rules just change from town to town? Well, that whole system is about to get a massive shakeup. Today, we're diving deep into the Aotearoa Planning Bill 2025 and its new National Standardized Zones. It is a complete rewrite of our planning system, so let's break down how this whole new thing actually works.
Okay, so to get our heads around this huge overhaul, we're going to tackle it in 6 key parts. Think of this as a roadmap. First, we'll look at the problem we're trying to solve. Then we'll get into the new universal system, walk through the toolkits for both our cities and our rural areas, cover the golden rules that make it all tick, and then wrap up with what this all means for you, the decision makers.
All right, let's kick things off right at the beginning. Why on earth did we need such a radical change? Well, the old system was completely bogged down in something called gray inertia. Let's unpack what that really means. I mean, just look at this. It's the perfect visual. Imagine a system so tangled up in its own conflicting rules that every single new project just adds another knot. That's what we call regulatory debt. It's the buildup from decades of messy, inconsistent rules. It was a complete labyrinth that just slowed everything down and cost an absolute fortune to navigate.
And where did all this chaos come from? Well, get this. Over 1,175 different local zones across the country. Think about that. It's like having 1,000 different rule books for the exact same game. It created this postcode lottery where the rules in one town had absolutely no connection to the rules in the town next door. It was just a recipe for total confusion.
So the end result of all of this? Total bureaucratic stagnation. Our best planners and experts were completely caught in what you could call a nitpicking trap. They were forced to spend all their time debating tiny, subjective details. You know, the color of a roof or the height of a fence, instead of focusing on the big picture, actually building great cities.
So how in the world do you fix a mess like that? Well, the solution is pretty radical. It's a huge shift away from that fragmented mess toward a single, standardized framework. Let's see how this new approach is designed to bring some much-needed clarity.
And this slide just nails the change, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the old way, a chaotic jumble of rules. And on the right, you've got the new way, a single, coherent national framework. We are literally replacing widespread confusion with a clear, universal language for how we build.
So here's how it's structured. It's a 3-layer system. At the bottom, you have the foundation, a base layer of about 13 national standardized zones. This gives us consistency from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South. Then, on top of that, regions can add specific overlays for local stuff, like protecting heritage sites. And for those truly unique situations, there's an option for a bespoke zone. But that needs a big sign-off from the minister.
Okay, so we've got the big picture of the new system. Now, let's dive into the actual tools in the toolkit. We'll start with the key urban zones that are really going to shape the future of our cities. Here's a quick look at the new zones. Honestly, the best way to think about them is like a national set of Lego bricks, standardized pieces you can use to build pretty much anything anywhere. Instead of over 1,000 different instruction manuals, we now have this one clear, concise menu of about 13 national zones that everyone can finally understand and use. Now, the transit corridors, these are the real power tools in this new urban kit. The Category 1 spine mandates, that's right, mandates, a minimum of 6 stories along our rapid transit routes. The Category 2 primary corridor requires at least 3 stories along frequent bus routes, and it also brings in a safer 30-kilometer-per-hour speed limit. The bottom line? Density now follows transit. It's written into the law. The residential zones use this really smart, inclusive logic. It's like a set of stacking blocks. So the high-rise zone automatically includes everything that's allowed in the mid-rise and low-rise zones, plus more. This is great because it allows for a natural mix of uses, small corner shops and low-rise areas, bigger offices in mid-rise, and larger venues in high-rise zones. It's all about creating more vibrant, walkable neighborhoods. And what about our industrial areas? Well, they get some really critical protection too. The exclusively industrial zone creates a kind of safe harbor for industry. It strictly prohibits sensitive things like houses, schools, and hospitals from being built there. This is a game changer because it allows factories and ports to operate 24/7 without the constant threat of complaints from new neighbors. Okay, so that's the cities, but let's shift gears and head out into the countryside.
Now, while this new system was inspired by Japan's model, it's definitely not a simple copy-paste job. The Aotearoa plan has some really specific, really vital protections for our unique rural economy.
And this is a super important adaptation. The toolkit includes zones that are custom-built to protect our primary industries, farming, forestry, quarrying. These rules are designed to stop productive land from being broken up and to avoid that classic problem of reverse sensitivity. That's where new houses pop up next to a farm or a quarry and then suddenly start complaining about the noise and the smell of an operation that's been there for years.
Each of these rural zones has a crystal clear purpose. Rural production, that's for large-scale farming, full stop. Rural mixed allows for things like tourism alongside smaller farms. Rural extractive is specifically for mining and forestry. And what about lifestyle blocks? Well, they're explicitly discouraged in those productive zones and are now funneled into one specific container, the rural residential zone. So we've got the zones, but how do they all actually work together? Well, the whole system is governed by just a few simple, really powerful rules. Let's have a look at the engine that makes this whole thing run.
At the very highest level, the system basically uses a simple on-off switch. Land is either in an urbanization promoting area, or UPA, which is pretty much a green light for development, or it's in an urbanization control area, the UCA, which acts like a firm brake to stop sprawl in its tracks. Simple as that. Now, this is a big one. It's called the newcomer principle. Here's how it works. If a new development is built next to something that's already there, the newcomer is responsible for fixing any problems. So, for example, if you build an apartment block next to a noisy port, the developer, the newcomer, has to pay for the soundproofing. It means we solve conflicts with smart engineering, not with endless, expensive legal battles.
And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the infrastructure-first approach. The idea is so simple. No more building suburbs on unserviced land and then having to come back later to expensively retrofit pipes and roads. Regional plans now have to make sure the infrastructure, the skeleton, is in place before the housing, the body, gets built on top of it. It creates a predictable pipeline of land that's actually ready for development.
So we've gone through the zones and the rules that make them work. But what does all of this really mean for you as a decision maker? Well, the change is profound. It's all about moving from a subjective world to an objective one. This is probably the biggest change of all. We're moving away from a subjective, reactive system to one that is objective and rules-based. That means no more projects getting tied up in knots for years because of appeals based on someone's personal taste. From now on, if a project meets the written rules of the zone, it gets the green light. Appeals are strictly limited to points of law, which brings a massive dose of certainty for everyone.
This quote from the source material really just nails the whole philosophy. The new system provides a strong, reliable skeleton of infrastructure and a consistent, predictable DNA of national rules to guide how we grow. So there you have it. This new system is an incredibly powerful toolkit for building the future of Aotearoa. The code has been written, the rules have been set. The only real question left is, what are we going to build with it?